Hi everyone, welcome to week 3. You are halfway through the course this summer, so you should be feeling really great about that. And as I could tell looking at many of your curriculum maps, which by the way, I'm still working on getting feedback through all of yours, but you should have some comments from me by Wednesday or Thursday at the latest of week 3. They're looking great, and many of you look like you're even moving on to this week's work on your curriculum map and continuing designing your project. Just looking back on last week's discussion, really amazing reflections on just what it's like to teach in our world today and how things are changing. I also particularly liked your reflections talking about what it's like to collaborate in the digital world and the challenges that poses. Hopefully many of you are discovering lots of tips and tricks with how to actually use Google Apps for Education, in particular Google Docs and Google Slides, and how to share those things. That'll just be really beneficial for you as you start using those tools with your students next year. Looking at what's expected for week 3, just reminding you to kind of use the modules and kind of go through each of the pages in order. That'll be your best bet. But essentially for week 3, you're going to be moving on to the next part of your curriculum map and really thinking about how are you going to know your students are learning what you want them to as far as content knowledge and as far as skills go. So in our world, we refer to those as assessments, and those can be smaller checks for understandings, but really for this week, you're going to be working on figuring out how am I going to assess my students both individually, and if I'm asking them to work in teams, where does that come in? So looking at the week 3 assignments, again, you're going to have another discussion board post, which we'll talk a little bit more later about. You're going to have the next stage of the curriculum map completed by Sunday. And you're also going to be going through this week's workshop, which is specifically going to help you think about performance tasks and really authentic assessments for your project, as well as individual assessments for knowledge and thinking. So really thinking about, okay, if I'm going to have my kids do a team presentation, that might be a performance task for my project, but knowing that literacy is so important today, how am I going to individually assess that the students are learning what I want them to learn in the project? And oftentimes the best way to do that is through an authentic written assessment for each individual student. So obviously with these beefier types of assessments, it's really important to have rubrics in order to grade these assessments. And then again, ending week 3 with any other things that you now know about project-based learning, and if there's any further need to knows, please add those to the list to further your learning. So looking at the curriculum map for this week and kind of what you're going to be doing is down in stage 2 at this evidence portion. Again, thinking about what's the big event that is going to demonstrate to me that they understand the driving question and are completing the project. And then down in this area, the individual assessment. So again, this is your authentic writing task. And then any other benchmarks or checks along the way. Quizzes could be embedded into your project at different points. Journals are great ways to check to see if kids are moving along the way you want them to as well. This is probably the area that is going to be the most challenging for you. But you'll notice when you complete the workshop for next week that there are some scaffolds that I provided for you that should really make this area easy. So when you might want to kind of do the workshop and curriculum map in conjunction this week, and many of you have probably already figured that out, that the workshops are really meant to help you understand how to fill in the curriculum map. But specifically on, let's see, The fifth slide of this week's workshop, you're going to find some really useful resources for you. So as you go to think about, okay, what is my writing prompt going to be for each person, each of my students within the project? There's some really great resources that I've created over the years for you here. So as you click off, you're going to be able to find a whole bunch of different task templates. For those of you in elementary, which there's a lot of you, you'll want to use the bookmark links down there. But for those of you designing projects for middle or secondary school, just click on whatever subject. If I'm, teaching social studies next year and I'm creating an awesome project that is going to be asking, students to look at, who has power in government and all that kind of cool stuff, I'm going to click on that and it'll take me down to little sentence frames that I can use and even sample prompts that I might even like and steal directly from the document. But at any rate, there's prompts for each subject, and really thinking about, why are we doing this? Why are we building individual assessments of knowledge and thinking into the projects? Well, really two major reasons. We're all writing teachers now, knowing that writing doesn't just happen in English class, but kids are asked to write in all different areas because that's what they're going to need to do later on in life in order to be successful. But also to just make sure you're grading fair when it comes to a team project. Sometimes it can be hard to see, who's doing what, and so asking kids to each individually write will let you know if they're getting it or not. So please do use this source. Again, it's on your workshop for this week. The last thing I wanted to touch on is just your discussion for this week. So you're going to be doing a mid-project reflection journal, as well as posting the prompt that you are thinking about using in your project. And then that way we can give you some feedback on that. I'm intentionally modeling 2 essential elements of PBL that you should also do with your students when facilitating a project next year, and that's really making intentional scaffolds for reflecting. And I encourage you to stop and reflect more than just at the midway point in a project, but at the very least, you need to stop and reflect halfway with your kids just to make sure they're on the right track and revisit knows and need to knows. And then you would, again, reflect with your students at the end of the project and ask them, what they liked, what they didn't like, and what they would change and what they're learning and all those good things. The other thing that I'm modeling is a protocol that we use to revise and give peer feedback so that it stays constructive. So it stays constructive and respectful, and it's called the Critical Friends Protocol. And essentially what you're doing is you're giving your peers a like, okay, about whatever it is they wrote. In this case, you can direct your Critical Friends feedback on their prompt, their performance task, written performance task prompt. But you give them a like, and that's genuinely just something you like about what they wrote. A wonder or question that you're left with, so something that you're left wondering, just to further their thinking. And then, at least one next step. So how could they improve? What's maybe an idea or a resource or something that might push them even further, a recommendation. So I'm really excited to see what you guys have to discuss on this week's discussion board. All right, so that is it for week 3. And I'm going to leave you with one design tip that I found creating projects over the years. As you're going to be finishing stage 1, this week and moving into stage 2, definitely think about, wow, as I look at my big ideas and enduring understandings for my project, like what do I want kids to actually remember 10 years from now from doing this project? You probably bulleted out a bunch of different statements, and it could be a mix of content, knowledge, and skills there. But what I've found is really helpful is turning my big ideas or enduring understandings, whatever you like to call them, I found it's nice to turn those into my essential questions. Okay, because essentially these are going to support the driving question, which is that one big overarching kid-friendly question. But really, the essential questions should be the things that are those big ideas that you want the kids to know. So again, little design tip trick, turn your enduring understanding statements into questions, open-ended questions, and then bam, you have your essential questions. So hope you guys have a wonderful week, and if there is anything that you need, don't hesitate to email me.